Hello and welcome to Harvest to You. I'm Pastor Marc, and it is a blessing to have you with us today. Listen, before we start the sermon, I want you to know about harvesttoyou.org. This is a space where you can find additional resources like sermons and devotionals, even a book I recently wrote. It's also a space where you can request prayer. I know that life can be hard, even lonely sometimes, and we would love to come alongside you with resources, equipping, and prayer for your life. Head on over to harvesttoyou.org. Psalm 127. While you turn there, why don't you stand? We're going to read these 5 verses together. A very short psalm, but a potent psalm for us this morning. Chapter 127, we have 5 verses. I'm not going to make you read anything today. I'm going to read it all to you. Here we go. Verse number 1. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain. It's vain for you to rise up early and to sit up late and to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he giveth his beloved sleep. Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is his reward, not fruit of the loom, fruit of the womb. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. Happy is the man that has his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gate. You can be seated. At first glance, you may think that this psalm is a bit of birdshot, that there's kind of just multiple categories and thoughts going on here, and there's nothing really unifying it, which is not the case. The author of this psalm, Solomon, who wrote 2 of the Psalms in the Psalter, is most well known for the book of Proverbs. And Proverbs is a bit like birdshot. It kind of reads like a Twitter feed. It's just kind of independent thoughts, one after the other after the other. This is not so much the case. While it covers a variety of topics, there is a unifying theme, largely, that we need to remember and keep our focus on God. He mentions this in verse number 1 as what I would call hard work minus God equals hollow work. When he says that except the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain. He is not describing people who do not labor, who do not work, who do not wake, who do not do their jobs. He's describing people that are showing up. They're doing their jobs. They're doing their best. They're working hard. But he says without the Lord, that is what he calls vanity. That you can work hard, you can plan well, you can do your best, but if God's not in it, then it won't amount to much when it's all said and done. And he is trying to push us away from overconfidence that would exclude God from our plans and push him out of the equation. This idea is not an independent idea to Psalm 127. This is echoed through the scriptures in so many places. We find this in the words of Jesus in John chapter number 15, where we're told that he's the vine and we're the branches. That we're not the vine, we're not the source of things, and we're told that without him, we can do nothing. We're told this in James, a very similar thought, where we're told in James that people go about their business. They go about their day. They say, I'm going to go into the city. I'm going to buy. I'm going to sell. I'm going to trade. I'm going to run the business tomorrow. I'm going to have the meeting tomorrow. I'm going to do the things on my calendar or my agenda. And we're told that we ought to say, if the Lord will, then we will live, or we'll do this, or we'll do that. But now you rejoice in your boastings, and all such rejoicing is evil. He's talking about something that we very normally do that is not a proper thing to do. And that is we plan, we prepare, we execute, we just go through life, and we think that we can handle it on our own. We think that our plans, that our preparation, that our budget, that whatever it is we have, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to start this business, I'm going to have a kid by age 27, I'm going to get married to this person or this type of person, that we have all of these things that we're thinking about, we're planning out, we're aiming for, goals that we set for ourselves, and oftentimes we think that we can exert an extreme measure of control over all of these things, and we tend to exclude and forget God. And what he says is that is maniacal. He says that is boasting, verse number 17, that's prideful, that's arrogant. It's a lack of humility to assume that you can just take care of yourself and everything will run sufficiently as though God doesn't exist as part of the equation. And he says, all such boasting is evil. That's strong language. Not all such boasting is pretty commonplace and, you shouldn't do it, but it's not that big of a deal when it's all said and done. We've all done it a time or two. Hey, it'd be wise to maybe include God. You should consider him. He says, no. That is arrogant and it's evil for you to build your home or watch your city or go to your job or whatever it is that you're doing. In all things, we should say, he says the counterpart to this is we should say, if the Lord wills, which doesn't mean that we sprinkle pious language on top of our plans. And we just say, hey, I'm going to go do A, B, C, D, and we just say tritely, if the Lord wills. If the Lord wills. Well, Lord willing, Lord willing, Lord willing. What he means is that there needs to be a mental and a heart level, a willingness to admit, I need God to superintend all of this. That the proper way for a Christian to think is to say, okay, I'd like to get into the school. I'd like to have kids by this age. I'd like to start the business. I'd like to see the business get to this much in gross sales. I'd like to do that. But in terms of the cosmos, I'm a child. What do I know? How do I actually know what's best for me? How do I know if these plans should go forward? I'm willing to submit full veto power over to the Lord, and I'm going to trust in him to guide, to direct, to give me the resources, to give me the wisdom, to help me make the decisions, and ultimately to shred my plans to pieces if he sees fit, and to trust in him. This is all of his doing when it's said and done. I'm not going about my work in an arrogant, evil, vain way. I'm going to trust in the Lord. He's not saying don't work. He's not saying don't plan. He is saying, though, that this ultimately has to center on God, and he needs to be in all of our plans. Because when we don't include him in our plans, what we're doing is we are forgetting him. All of us know at some level what it's like to feel forgotten, neglected, pushed to the side, treated as though we didn't exist, we didn't matter, and we all know that that feels terrible. Authors say that when you write a book, the worst thing that can happen is not getting a boatload of negative reviews. The worst thing that can happen is getting no reviews. No one even cared to read it. No one looked at it. No one formed an opinion about it. They just don't care. It's like it didn't exist and your work didn't matter. When we exclude God from our work, from our life, from our plans, what we're doing functionally is forgetting God and pushing him to the side. And if we don't like that feeling, we think that to be neglected or minimized is something that we hate. When our boss treats everyone else like they're royalty, but somehow excludes us or pushes us to the side or acts like we don't exist or we're not part of the team. If we hate that feeling, how do you think God feels about that? When he makes us, sustains us, is the author of all, then how dare we exclude him? And Psalm 127 is saying that when you build your house, when you go about your job, that you had better consider the Lord, except the Lord is in that, it's going to be vanity. And verse number 2 begins to echo the sentiment even further when he says it's vain for you to rise up early and to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he gives his beloved sleep. What he's describing is another vanity of people who are working tirelessly. People who are getting up early, people who are staying up late, they're burning the candle at both ends, they're giving it maximum effort, they're doing all that they can, and if we lived just by what is an American ideal, we would say that's enough. The American ideal is that you can have whatever you want, you can accomplish anything, you have unlimited potential as long as you're willing to put the work in. Sure, you're going to need 5% luck, but really you're going to need 95% effort. If you will study harder, if you will work harder, if you'll put more time in, if you'll be more diligent, if you'll pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, then you can accomplish anything. The sky's the limit. You can have what they have. Ultimately, it's about you, your effort, what you put forward. It's all about your resume. And while I do think it's important to work hard, this is not an anti-work hard psalm or book in the Bible. The Bible is all for working hard. But we have to understand the limits of our own capacity, potential, efforts, and understand that our efforts ultimately are rooted and need to be rooted in the Lord, that we depend on Him. Corinthians says this, I think, so beautifully. It echoes the same sentiment when it asks two questions. The question number one is, what makes you different from somebody else? It puts it as the old English way to say it is, what makes thee to differ from another? What makes you different? You say, well, that's easy. I got more money. I got more beauty. I got more success. I'm smarter than most of them. I mean, most of them, all of them. I was valedictorian. I know what makes me different. It asks another question. It says, what do you have that you did not receive? What is it that you have that you didn't receive? Most Americans, once again, would say, easy answer, everything. I'm the one that paid the money for college. I'm still paying the money for college on my student loans. It's still going. I'm the one that put in the effort. My classmates, they didn't put in as much effort, and it hasn't gone as good for them. At work, I got the promotion. You know why? Because I slaved, because I put the time in. You know why I have a good family? Because I try to be a good dad. I've read the books. I've gone to the seminars. I've made a concerted effort. You know why I got to start and they didn't start? I practiced in the off season. I ran the miles. I ran the laps. I did the training. It's because of my effort. What makes me different? What do I have that I didn't get? Everything. I earned it. That is the American mantra. I earned it. It was my effort. Look at me. And here is the question that is asked. And it says, basically, no. You've received everything. Everything that you think is because of you, if you trace it down to the root system, it is not because of you. It's all a gift. You say, I don't know about that. Like, it's not all a gift. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Think about all the things you had no control over that were gifted to you. You didn't have control over who your parents were. Why did this person get parents who neglected them, didn't hold them, didn't snuggle them, didn't talk to them, didn't look them in the eye, and now they're 16 years old and they can't carry on a conversation and they're socially awkward, they can't look someone in the eye and have a conversation with them, but you can, and it has nothing to do with anything you did. You don't think that has an effect? Anyone who studies childhood and adolescence and sociology, anyone will tell you that those early years are so formative and have a massive effect on you, and you had no part to play in that. Who gave you your personality, where you're driven or not driven? Who allowed you to be born in this country instead of Madagascar? You think you're the same person with the same business and the same money, the same family if you're born in Madagascar instead of America. You're kidding yourself. Why were you born and everything computes what we would view as the right way where someone else was not, and they're mentally handicapped or they're on the spectrum and they just can't do the same things that you can in the same way? You had control over that. That was you. Why are you sitting here breathing right now when someone you went to high school with is not? They got in a car wreck. They didn't wake up one day. Think about your life. You trace it down. There are so many variables that are way outside of your control. And I'm not trying to minimize hard work. Work hard. But us Americans who work hard and tell ourselves that we're going to do it, it's all our accomplishments, we have to be reminded of the simple reality of what Corinthians tells us, that if you received all of these things graciously, why do you glory as though you didn't receive it? Why do you boast? Why do you say you're awesome? Why are you pretending as though God had nothing to do with this when God had everything to do with this? That's what Psalm 127 is saying, that you can work hard, you can burn the candle at both ends, you can build the house, you can go about your job, but when you neglect God and you forget God and you act as though He had nothing to do with it, that is criminal. That's vanity. That is not the way that it's supposed to work. We are supposed to acknowledge God as the center of everything and say, Lord, I'm going to work with you in mind. I'm going to work with your power. I'm going to work for your glory. I'm going to put you at the center of all of this. And he says, when you do that, he gives his beloved sleep. Now that's interesting to me because I looked up some statistics on sleep over this week as I prepared for the sermon. This year, there was published by the National Center for Health Statistics. I didn't even know there was a National Center for Health Statistics, but apparently there is. We pay somebody in the government to do this stuff. Using 2024 data, the newest report on sleep is this. 1 out of every 6 Americans has trouble falling asleep every day or most days. 1 out of 5 Americans has trouble staying asleep when they'd like to every day or most days. 45% of Americans say that they do not wake up feeling rested. 57% of Americans said they would feel better if they could get more sleep. 20% of Americans reported they get 5 hours or less of sleep per night. That is in comparison to the 1942 data that was 3% of Americans. All that to say, apparently, America's tired. I don't know if you know this. You're like, I know, I'm part of America. It's me, we're tired. This is interesting to me because we're tired, yet we have more tools to not be tired than any generation that's ever lived. We got customized mattresses to the hilt. We got sleep numbers. We got zero gravity. We have blackout curtains. We have cooling mattresses. We got Oura rings and Apple Watches to monitor our sleep. We got My Pillows. We got purple pillows. We got comfy pillows. We got all the pillows. We got all the stuff. All of these things that are supposed to help us sleep well, sleep better, yet we are less rested than any time in prior history for America. How do you compute that? What do we attribute to that? Is that technology? Is that blue light? Do we all need to go back to being Amish and living under candles when it goes dark and we just quit our work when it gets dark outside? Is this stress? Is this pressure from our parents? Why is this that we're not rested? There's probably a lot of answers to this, but one of the answers is a spiritual answer. And the spiritual answer is verses 1 or 2, you're not trusting in God. You're working, you're laboring, you're exhausting yourself, and there's no consideration for God at all. And what it's trying to communicate is that there is not just a mental, spiritual, but also a physiological benefit that comes from when you begin to rest and trust in God and put God in his proper place and you under him in your proper place, that produces rest. That when you can remind yourself that you are not God and you don't keep the world spinning. And whether you go to sleep or not, the world's going to keep on spinning without you and your effort. When you can remind yourself that I can go to sleep because God never sleeps. This is another psalm, that we should lift up our eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help comes from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He that keeps you will not slumber. He that keeps Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. What is that saying? God doesn't rest so you can rest. You can stop working and stop worrying and stop laboring because he's never going to sleep. He's never taking a day off. He has it handled that you can stop what it calls the bread of anxious toil. You can stop trying to manufacture everything as though it all depends on you, and you can take a breath and say, you know what? I'm going to close my eyes tonight and God can run the world without me and everything's going to be all right. I can take my cares, I can take my burdens, and many of us, we go to bed and our body starts to try to shut down, but our soul is still on the clock. And I'm right with you, okay? I'm raising my hand. I'm just as guilty as any of the rest of you for this. But you go to bed, but you carry with you all this stuff. The mortgage and the kids and the marriage and the doctor report and tomorrow's meetings and the regrets for the decisions you've made and that thing that somebody said to you today, and you carry all this stuff and it weighs on you, and then you're shocked when your sleep number, zero gravity, purple pillow, blackout curtains, white noise machine, sleep apnea machine doesn't get the job done. The issue is it is a physical one, but it's not rooted in the physical. It's rooted in the mental and the emotional and the spiritual. This is why, we even acknowledge this. Non-Christians know this. If you have chronic fatigue and insomnia, one of the things that a therapist or a doctor will prescribe for you is to go do cognitive behavioral therapy with a therapist to try to help you to get to sleep better. And CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is designed for you to assess your anxious and your worry and even your worry about sleep and try to release that mentally and get to a better place mentally so that physically you can rest. They will not put it in spiritual terms, but there is a spiritual component to this, because if you exclude God, then it all does depend on me. I have to bear all the weight. But if you put God in the equation, all of a sudden, I have someone that I can rest in and I can release tomorrow because he's already there. So here's the point. If you can do this the right way, when you go to bed, you remember, I'm not God. I need God. I'm loved by God. You say, well, that sounds like Sunday school. That sounds like something you'd teach a third grader. I know. But these are truths that can help relax your soul and in turn relax your body. And when he says he gives his beloved sleep, that's not a joke. That is how it works. Come unto me, all ye who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke on you. Learn of me. I'm meek and lowly in heart. What is that saying? Come to me. Do it my way. See if there's not rest for your soul. So what do we learn from Psalm 127? Well, we learn that I don't need to carry what God's supposed to carry. I don't need to take God out of the equation, because if I do, all my hard work is going to be hollow work. And then we begin to learn about children. And this is where people think, well, this must be a completely different psalm or a completely different change of topic. Solomon must have wrote the first 2 verses one week and the last 3 verses the next week. No. The thought's supposed to continue into our parenting that we need God even in our homes, that we dare not exclude him there either. It says in verse number 3, the children are blessings, they're not burdens. You need to think about God the right way. You need to think about your children the right way. Children are a heritage, underline heritage. That's a good thing. I don't know if you've ever had an inheritance. I have not, but if you ever get one, it's supposed to be a good thing. You're not supposed to inherit like the dog who's going to die in a week and you have to bury him. You're supposed to inherit some money or some stocks or some property or something. Children are an heritage of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is his reward. Verse number 5, happy is the man that has his quiver full of them. Now, let's take a trip to the honest planet and let's talk about this for a minute, okay? Does that mean that children will always bring you infinite joy 100% of the time and there will be no burdens? No, it does not, okay? We know that that's not the case. But it does mean that fundamentally, children are supposed to be viewed as and treated as a blessing, not a burden. If you're a parent, you know, especially if you have children that are like elementary age or younger, you know that parenting can get negative very quickly. That you are course correcting, you're instructing, you're saying no to things that they want that wouldn't be good for them. You're trying to teach them that that's the wrong way. You're doling out consequences with teeth because they've stepped across a clearly defined boundary. That's part of the parenting gig, at least it should be. There's definitely a proper place for that. There's such a thing as the discipline lever that you need to pull in your home. Children do need discipline. But if you're not careful, you can become so fixated on that and so fixated on fixing the problems or trying to coach or trying to correct, and it's well-intentioned, it is, but you can forget to pull the delight lever. And you're so discipline heavy that the delight lever sits over here collecting dust, getting rusty, and you're never pulling that. In a family who has correction and discipline, that correction and discipline is supposed to be doled out in the context of mutual delight. That there's supposed to be this foundation for the family that is one that is not just implied, but is literally explicitly stated, verbally expressed, that you care for and delight in your children. Some of the phrases that tend to percolate up in our home are, I'm your biggest fan. Nobody is for you more than me. I'm for you. I love you. You are my blessing. I care about you. I'm so glad God gave you to me so that I could be your dad. I'm so glad God gave me 3 boys, and I'm so glad God gave me a daughter. I'm so glad you're part of our family. I can't imagine our family without you. Like, these are things that should be expressed to your children, both in their adolescence and in the teenage years and even into adulthood, that there's relationship here. There's nobody like you. I care about this relationship. Those things should be written down in notes and in birthday cards and said to people. Instead, there are many homes where you would think it was a war zone. It's not just correcting out of some sort of loving way, but in many homes, it is berating, it is belittling, it is yelling, it is cursing, it is fly off the handle, and you need to know that's not okay. You need to take whatever excuse you give yourself and tell yourself the honest truth that that excuse is lame. I was brought up this way. I'm Irish, we have a temper. I'm Italian, we're flamboyant. My great-granddaddy was Navajo Indian. He didn't smoke a peace pipe one time, so it just messed us all up. Whatever it is. You need to tell yourself that doesn't work. That's not a good excuse for you to not delight in your children, and you should view them, and in turn, they should be internalizing that they're your reward, they're your blessing, they're your heritage, that you're happy because they're part of your home. Does that mean that you're always happy? No. There are times where I communicate to my children, listen, I love you. Right now, I love you. I always love you. But I'd like to enjoy you. I'm not enjoying you very much, okay? Let's work on this. Right, but that should be the exception, not the rule. There should be joy and delight and fun. I cracked up yesterday at my daughter. It's just these little moments are so precious. And I wish that I would write more down and hang on to them and remember them. But 2 of my boys got a haircut in preparation for school season coming up here a couple days ago. And one of them, whoever cut his hair, I wasn't there, they botched it. They really did. And we got it fixed. We went to somebody else and we got it adjusted mostly. But they botched it. And I was trying to ask my wife, who was this? So I know not to go to them next time I go in. And she's trying to describe them. I'm not getting it. And I know the shop. I know some of the people are there. And this probably isn't the best way to describe someone, but it's what came to mind. I'm like, were they a chain smoker? And she's like, yeah, that's them. I'm like, okay, I know who it is. You can smell it. Their voice is grovelly, like we just knew it. The next day, someone came over to the house, and out of nowhere, Willow tells the people that are at the house, my dad knows a chainsaw smoker. I got the biggest kick out of that she has no idea what this means, and somehow she thinks someone's smoking chainsaws. Kids are awesome, right? Kids are supposed to be a blessing. They should be viewed that way. I want to thank you as a pastor. I've been here, it'll be 10 years in October. But the church is much older than me, with 30-something years without me. And long before I was here, there was a sentiment and a heartbeat in this church that children are a blessing. And I'm glad that I inherited that heartbeat. Children are a blessing. We're glad to have them in the nursery. Children are a blessing. We're glad to have parent dedications. Children are a blessing. We're glad to have children's church. We're glad to have a school that has preschool and elementary age and high school age, junior high age kids that are there that we can instruct and teach and guide. Like, kids are a blessing. Does that mean that there's more chaos sometimes? Sure. Are there more holes in the drywall and dirty toilet stalls and broken choir mics? Yep, but kids are a blessing. We'll take it. Are there going to be 3 kids that take their cherry dilly bar today after church and they bring it inside and they set it on something and it melts into a puddle and it forever stains whatever that is red? Yeah, probably. What's the solution? These stinking kids? No. You know what? We'll take it. We'll take some stained seats and some spilled drinks and some blue cupcake icing in the carpet. We ripped all the carpet up. It's gone now, but it used to be that it was all stained. I swore that the concrete was going to be stained blue from all the cupcake icing. It wasn't, but I thought it would. That's okay. We want to have VBS. We want to bless kids. We want to do our best to view kids as a blessing. We want to do this in our homes. I hate to just use American kind of analogies today, but I really don't think in America that kids are viewed this way oftentimes. The amount of couples that don't want to have kids, you know what people don't want to have kids? And if this is you, I'm not trying to be overly blunt, but you're wrong. If you think kids are just going to be a ball and a chain, they're just going to cramp my style, I'm not going to be able to travel as much, I'm going to have less independence, less freedom, that is true to a point, but you're missing the reality that will far outweigh this. The kids are intended to be a blessing. They're intended to be an inheritance and a reward and a gift. Does that mean that it's all going to be easy? Does that mean that no one's going to ever go wayward? Does that mean that there'll never be any heartbreak? No. But it does mean that they're an inheritance and a blessing, so view them that way. Have loads of kids. You say, I came to church and you told me to go make babies? Yeah. Okay? Go have kids. Adopt some kids. Foster some kids. See them as the blessing that they are. If there's most families, and this, if you have 1 or 2 kids, I'm not being critical of you, but most families see kids as they're going to hamper me, so I'm going to have none, or I'll have as maybe as few as possible. I don't know what the magic number is. That's between you and the Lord. But as long as your magic number includes the view that they're a blessing, and if my quiver's full, I'm going to be happy, that's the proper view. I know that, they say that by 2050, Muslims or Islam will be the primary religion in the world. There'll be more Islamic people than there will be any other religion. And they say the reason for that is because those who are Christian tend to have, on average, 1.8 to 2 kids per household, and Muslim families tend to have 6, 8, 10 kids. And just the reality of the birth rates, it's going to so far outweigh, there's going to be so many people that are just born into the religion that it's going to overtopple it. I don't know that God had being the world power of religion in mind when he said this. I don't think that's the case. But I think there is a reality to thinking about society, thinking about the labor force, thinking about your own happiness and blessing. Having children is not a bad thing. It's not very in vogue right now, but having kids is a good thing. Go have a gaggle of them. Enjoy the fire out of them. Will they cost you money? Yes. But will you have a lot of fun? Yeah, you should. You should, because kids are a blessing. It says in verse number 4 that there's not just kids that are a blessing, but it says that they're crafted and they're commissioned for a purpose. It puts it in a metaphorical way. It says, as arrows in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. This is part of the reason that we don't have a lot of kids as American families most of the time is because they're not children of the youth. Many times people get married when they're 35. And they're like, I don't want to be graduating a kid out of high school when I'm 68 years old. I have to limit this. So there's something to be said for even being married young and having kids young. When is the proper time? We could debate that all day long. But personally, if someone's 20 or 21 years old and they're like, I want to get married, I'm always like, have at it. Do they love Jesus? Do you want to grow with them? Knock yourself out. Children of the youth, they're like arrows. in the hand of a mighty man. Now, people debate what arrows in the hand means. Is this for offense? You know, is the mighty man someone who's a warrior, and you're sending kids like out to the enemy to be light in darkness, to somehow infiltrate a dark, evil world? I don't know, maybe. Is it meant to be more defensive? Arrows were used for defense too. And you have to remember, like this day and age that it's written, there was power in numbers. Having lots of kids meant you had more hands to work the farm. Having lots of kids meant you had more people to defend you if marauders came by. Like there was a reality to this that like they were even used defensively. Having kids, I always tell my mom, you hedged your bet. She had 5 kids. If you don't know my family, my mom had 5 boys, no girls. And I'm the runt of the family. All of the boys, we were born 10 pounds plus, every one of us. And my youngest brother was a 12-pound baby. That's a big old baby. And he's still a big guy. But I tell my mom sometimes, Mom, you did a good job hedging your bets. The odds of you having one of us in prison is higher for you, but the odds of one of us having money and taking care of you down the road is also higher for you as well. So, you know, you balance this out. One of us will take care of you, Mom. Children, is this saying that they're defensive, that they insulate you from loneliness? Maybe. I don't know. Here's what I do know. I know that it's saying, when it says that children are like arrows, that it means that they are crafted and commissioned for a purpose. If you think about arrows, there's a few things that are like universally true. Arrows are shaped. You've never walked up to a tree, broke a branch off, put it in a bow, and shot a deer with it. Every arrow has to be fashioned. You've got to whittle that thing. You've got to shape that thing. You've got to sand that thing. You've got to work with it. Children are like arrows. Great raw potential, but they have to be shaped, crafted. There's a lot of intentionality that has to go into it. This debunks the common myth that as long as I give my children a good environment, they'll just naturally grow up and be well-formed, well-adjusted citizens of the nation, and they'll be fine. No. You're going to have to use intentionality. You're going to have to think about where are we headed? Why are we headed there? What are we trying to teach our kids? Why are we trying to teach them this? What software am I downloading onto their hardware? Like there's some intentionality and crafting that goes into this. Woodrow Wilson, our former president, actually addressed this in, I think, a comical way when he was president of Princeton University. This was before he was president of the country. He addressed parents, and he told parents, he said, I get many letters from you parents about your children. And these are his words, quote, you want to know why we people up here in Princeton cannot make more of them or do more for them. Let me tell you the reason we cannot. The reason is that they are your sons reared in your home, blood of your blood, bone of your bone. They have absorbed the ideals of your homes. You have formed and fashioned them. They're your sons. In these malleable, moldable years of their lives, you forever left your imprint on them. Now, what he's saying is, you want us to undo in 3 or 4 years of college education what you did in 18 years, and that's not the way that it works. You fashioned them. And whether you realize it or not, you are fashioning your children. Whether you're intentional or not, you are shaping them, you are molding them. They are picking up ideals and mindsets and habits from you. They are. So be intentional. Shape them the right way. Arrows have to be directed. This is like part and parcel of being an arrow. Somebody has to point you in the right direction. Meaning, children need guidance. They don't need to be left to their own devices. Are there some decisions that a 10-year-old can make? Sure. Wendy's or McDonald's. Let them have at it. There ain't much above that, though. They're children. Well, they're 16 now. Okay, they still need your guidance. Well, they're 18 now. They're an adult. I know legally, but they still need your guidance. You're a lot older, a lot wiser. You've seen a lot more. Children need guiding. In our house, we have, and our children are familiar with this terminology, there is a view, there is a voice, and there is a vote. Very infrequently do the kids get a vote. The house is not a democracy, okay? Me and my wife are not dictators, but we're parents. That means it's our job to guide, to decide, to direct. So it's not like up for vote. Like, are we going to go to church or not? Which school do I attend? You're 12 years old. You're not deciding if you're homeschooled or go to school. We're deciding that for you. We will tell you what's happening in school. We will tell you when you're getting up. We will tell you when bedtime is. That's not of your choosing. You're a child. There's a view. Our kids get lots of views. This is on the other end of the spectrum. This is what we're doing. I just want to let you know. This is not up for like debate. We're not having a conversation about it. This is the way it's going to go. But I don't want to do football camp. You know what you're doing football camp? We signed you up. We're going to drop you off. Have fun. I won't have fun. Figure it out. You say, you sound cruel. I'm not trying to be cruel, but this is the reality of leading. This is the reality of being a parent. Many times there's a voice. This is where we're at most often. This is what we're thinking. I would recommend this to you parents. This is what we're thinking. This is why we think it would be good for you. We want to give you a voice. You can weigh in. I'm not giving you a vote. Your voice doesn't have as much weight as my voice does, but I'm going to allow you to weigh in. We can talk about this, especially as they start to get into adolescence, especially as they're in teen years. There needs to be more voice, and you need to consider their perspective and listen to them. But at the end of the day, you make the decision. You're going to guide, you're going to point them in the direction, you're going to make a lot of those decisions for them. I don't want to go on a mission trip with you. Sorry, we signed us up, we're all going on a mission trip. Sorry, not sorry. Like, we're going to go do this. Why do you not want to go? Tell me. Okay, I heard you, I listened to it, I don't agree with it, we're going. The end. That's the job of parents, to treat your children as arrows. I'm going to fashion, I'm going to craft, I'm going to direct, and ultimately I'm going to release them. Arrows do no good if they stay in the quiver the whole time. Ultimately, they have to be released. You have to let go. You have to allow them, and the end of this chapter is going to talk about this. We'll read it in just a minute. You have to allow them to stand on their own 2 feet. Now, this should be done incrementally. It shouldn't be that I'm a helicopter parent. I'm making every decision. I'm doing everything for you. I'm releasing no leeway, no autonomy. You can't get your license. You can't go do stuff on your own. Like, there shouldn't be all of that where you're just in complete control and then they're 18 and all of a sudden they now have full control. The best way to do this is incrementally releasing as you can and removing yourself as the helicopter parent when you can and allowing them to make some decisions, to make some mistakes, and to do that incrementally while they're under your care so that ultimately you can really release them, right? Before you go shoot the deer from your tree stand, you're going to take a few practice shots at the target. You're going to be in your backyard doing a few practice shots, releasing that arrow before you really release the arrow, right? The same is true with children. You want to have those little bite-sized pieces where you're giving them the ability to be on their own. Sociologists say, and I don't have a verse for this, I don't even have stats for it, I just have anecdotes, but I feel that it's true. They say one of the biggest things that's missing in adolescence now is unstructured, unguided play, like without parents. That most of us grew up in a day and age where we played a lot with the neighborhood friends or our brothers and sisters or people that were around, and there weren't parents like around. They may have been in the house and we were at the ball field, or they may have been down the street or something, but they weren't right there to superintend every argument and to weigh in on every decision and to constantly be guiding. And what sociologists say is that that's missing a lot, and the amount of time that kids are spending in unstructured, even as say a 10-year-old without parents, is like they're not learning how to compromise, how to negotiate, how to solve problems on their own, how to argue with their peers, how to work things out, how to be bored and just figure out what to do. Like, these things are missing many times from our young people, and it has ripple effects on them. So there's even at an early age, releasing and not being just so involved in every single thing that you constantly have to be there. Like, drop them off at ball practice and go run an errand, the coach will take care of them for a little bit, right? You don't have to sit in the bleachers every time. You don't have to be watching everything. Ultimately, you release kids. You release them to go out into the world. You say, well, what happens when I release them? Well, the goal is the end of the chapter. This is the goal, that when you release them, this happens. This is the phrase in Psalm 127 that people don't talk about. Almost every phrase in this psalm is like a coffee mug phrase. They were like, except the Lord built the house, right? Children are a heritage. Like there's all of these phrases that we know really well, but then there's this one phrase that we never talk about. And the phrase is, they won't be ashamed. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gate. Part of the reason we don't use this is because it's just culturally so different for us. Enemies, gate, what are we talking about? The gate was the place where cases were adjudicated. It was where the arguments were made. It was almost like our court system. Oftentimes there would be philosophy arguments that would fly back and forth. Oftentimes there would be cases for who you needed to support or not support, what was right, what was wrong. And this was the place where all of these kind of ideals duked it out. And what it says is, if you will include the Lord in your plans, if you'll rest and trust in him, he'll give you rest. If you'll view your children the right way, if you'll treat them as arrows, then one day they will be able to stand when you can't stand beside them. They will be able to unashamedly, confidently stand in the gate and argue against what it calls the enemies. They'll be able to argue against the wrong ideas. They'll be able to stand for righteousness. They'll be able to say, no, we shouldn't go that way. That's foolish. That's not wise. We would maybe say it this way. They'll be able to go to university and take philosophy 101 and not be ruined by it. They'll be able to go into the workplace and have some coworkers that tempt them to do A, B, C, or D and opt out of it and choose a path of righteousness instead of a path of foolishness. They'll be able to stand up, and they'll be able to stand for righteousness, and they'll do it in an unashamed way. And I think deep down, almost every Christian parent has at their core some desire like this. That I would release my kids, and they would stand on their own 2 feet, and they would live a life of wisdom. They would not be altered or detoured or somehow convinced or deceived by the enemy, but they would have the gumption and the wherewithal and the knowledge base to be able to stand up for what is right. And what this is saying is that a lot of this does depend on the parents. You have to include God. You can't forget him. You can work tirelessly and read all the books, but you can't forget him. You have to view your kids the right way. You have to provide an environment of delight. Right? You're laying a foundation. You're giving direction. You're providing courage. Like you're doing that to your kids so that they can launch out into the world without fear or shame, because you can't keep them forever close. They're going to have to leave. They're going to have to be released one day. And it is this beautiful picture of what it takes at a really basic level to have a Christian home, and not even just a Christian home. It talks in terms of kids and parenting so much, but you can apply these principles to your business, you can apply them to your work, you can apply them to your worries, that you include God in all of this. That is the foundation. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. You include God in all of this. You view your kids the proper way. You treat them as arrows. There's a few basic things that you have to understand there. And then you rest in the Lord. You say, well, I'm worried to pieces. I'm going to drop them off at college. It's going to go wrong. I'm worried to pieces that this is going to happen or that's going to happen or that their boyfriend's going to break up with them and break their heart and this and that. He gives his beloved rest. You keep trusting in the Lord. You keep resting in the Lord. You do your best, but you rest in him and you trust in him and you let him do his part. That is the message of Psalm 127. It is a hopeful message. It is a restful message, but it's a real message, a practical message. That here's our part to play, but then here's God's part to play. Let's not conflate the two. Let's do our part and allow him to do his and rest and trust in his hands. Now, I'll say this and I'll be done. we have communion on the docket today. So this sermon was like a lot about parenting. What's it have to do with communion? No. You missed it. The communion is about remembering the Lord, and so is the sermon. The sermon is about not forgetting God in the midst of all that you do, including your parenting. Communion is all about not forgetting God. It is this thing that we do because Jesus told us, I want you to remember me. Literally the phrase is, this do in remembrance of me. And part of why we do communion together as a church is to stop and to have a tradition to force ourselves into that mindset to remember and reflect and not forget our Savior. And I'm going to encourage you today as we take communion. I'll pray in just a moment and then we'll do it together. I'm going to encourage you to do your best to bundle up your thoughts and your heart and your worries and all the things you're thinking about, lunch and kids and to-do lists, and I got to mow the lawn today because hopefully it won't rain for the first day in 80 years. To take all that and to quiet it down and to push your thoughts in the direction of Jesus and say, Jesus, I'm going to remember that you died for me, that you sacrificed for me, and I'm grateful for that. This is a practical way for us to live out Psalm 127 and to say, we're not going to forget you. I pray that today's message challenged and encouraged you in your walk with Christ. And if this sermon was a blessing to you, know that it was made available because of our financial partners. I want to take a moment and invite you to be a part of that tribe. I know not everyone's in a position to give, and if that's you, then please just let this broadcast be a blessing. There are no strings attached. But if God's blessed you with the ability to give, I would love for you to link arms with us and support what God is doing here. As a small way of saying thank you for your generosity, I'd love to send you a copy of my new book, The Prayer Jesus Gave. This is a guided tour through the model prayer, the Our Father, as some call it. And if you've ever felt like your prayer life could use an upgrade, I know it will be a help. You can give and receive your copy at harvesttoyou.org/give or by mailing a donation to the address on your screen. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next Sunday.